So we're in Mark chapter 2 this morning. And we're going to read about the call of Levi, or Matthew. When we see the things that Jesus does here, it's very interesting. There's things that in a casual reading we may not pick up on, but I hope this morning in our study together that we'll notice some things that will encourage us as we attempt to reach out to others who are around us. First, notice in verse 13. He went out again by the sea, and all the multitude came to him, and he taught them. We see time after time multitudes coming to Jesus. Now keep in mind, while Jesus is 100% God, at this time he was also 100% man. You ever get tired? You ever get tired of entertaining? Not that Jesus was entertaining people. You ever get mentally tired of people? And it's hard to say this. It's hard to say this without sounding wrong, but sometimes you just got to be alone, don't you? You need a break from people from time to time. And I think maybe not everybody's like that, but I am. And I think Jesus may have felt that way a little bit. Remember, last week, we talked about after healing Peter's mother-in-law, and after healing many who were sick, and those who were demon-possessed. Back in chapter 1, verse 35, in the morning, having risen long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place. Sometimes you just have to get away from people. You have to spend some time alone with God. But everywhere Jesus went, everyone is looking for you. That's what the apostles said to him. Everyone is looking for you. And so we see him coming again and being thronged by the multitudes. And he taught them. One of Jesus' habits was to walk near the seaside, and the gradual slope down to the water. He would stand down by the water and he could speak to the people who were up on the shore. And it allowed his voice to carry up a little bit to them. And occasionally he would get out on a boat, remember? And go out just a little bit. In Luke chapter 5, that's what he told Peter to do, to cast out just a little from the shore. And he sat there and taught the multitudes on that occasion. This is something that Jesus did often. So the multitudes are there, and he taught them. But then, verse 14, you notice, as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax office, and he said to him, "Follow me." So he arose and followed him. All of these people coming to see Jesus, to hear Jesus, perhaps hoping to witness a miracle or have a miracle worked on their behalf. And Jesus points out one person, Levi, the tax collector. He points him out and says, "You, follow me." Out of all the people that Jesus could have singled out on that occasion, he singled out a man who was a traitor to the Jewish race in the minds of the Jews, because he was working for the Romans. He was working for their enemies. He was extorting money in the minds of the Jews. We don't know exactly how Matthew conducted himself. But to the Jew, if you were a tax collector, you were automatically an extortionist. You were a person who was going to steal your money. But Jesus pointed him out, singled him out, and said, "You, follow me." This was possibly the worst person that Jesus could have picked in the minds of the common Jew. And notice how he did it. As he passed by. The Lord was alert to the eternal potential of every moment, every situation, every circumstance. Jesus regarded the present moment and the present human being in his presence, in the present circumstance, in all of its vast potential for the future. Matthew, as we know, went on to record his account of the gospel. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is the man who wrote Matthew. Levi, the tax collector. Jesus saw something in him that nobody else paid attention to. And despite being surrounded by a multitude, Jesus singled him out and said, "You need to follow me." This is something I'm really bad at. Being aware of the present circumstances sometimes. Because I've got my day planned out. I've got to be here at a certain time. I've got to do this at a certain time. And anybody who's in my way, they're not really in my way. But sometimes that's the way we think, isn't it? I don't have time to sit down and talk to you because I'm busy doing something else. That's not how Jesus thought. And that's not how we should think. We need to pay attention to the present moment and to the person who is with us in that moment before we go on to our next task. Jesus paid attention, and he reached out to individuals who he saw potential in, who he saw could help him in his ministry, in his goal to seek and to save the lost, in his goal to glorify the Father. Sometimes I need to open my eyes a little bit more to see those opportunities, to see that potential in others. Let's talk about Levi for a few moments. Look at what happens next. Verses 15 and 16, it happened as he was dining at Levi's house, that many tax collectors and sinners also sat together with Jesus and his disciples. For there were many. And they followed him. You know, that person who you don't think is worth your time, or who society doesn't think would ever be any benefit to their group, to their church, to their organization. If you spend time with them and you reach out to them, you're not only impacting that individual, you're also impacting everybody who's associated with that individual. Here at this feast that Matthew throws, as he's preparing to leave to be with Jesus, many tax collectors and sinners also sat together. And those last three words of that verse 15, and they followed him. Nobody else wanted them to follow them. But Jesus saw the need. He saw the potential, not only in Matthew, but in all those that Matthew was connected with. He could reach them as well through Matthew. And in verse 16, there's a complaint. When the scribes and Pharisees saw him eating with the tax collectors and sinners, they said to his disciples, "How is it that he eats and drinks with tax collectors and sinners? How dare he lower himself if he thinks he's somebody special? He thinks he's from God. He thinks he's a great rabbi, a great teacher, a great master. But look who he's eating with. He can't possibly be who he says he is. Tax collectors and sinners." The Pharisees, the scribes, they had no use for these individuals. They didn't see any potential in them. They didn't see how they could bring them to God. But Jesus knew their need. Jesus knew their need, and he was willing to address that need. Here we see how Jesus teaches us how to reach the masses, how to reach the multitude, how to bring those in who need him. And it's simply this: treating outcasts as friends. I've seen this t-shirt, meme that was turned into a t-shirt about Jesus partying with sinners. And it talks about how he did all of these things with the sinners. But here's the point that it misses, is he didn't sin with the sinners. Yes, he ate with them. He shared a meal. He treated them as people worthy of his attention, but he didn't lower himself to their behavior. He didn't lower himself to the sinful lifestyle that they were living. He maintained that highest type of life in their presence, and he impacted them, influenced them to live that life as well. And so when the Pharisees and scribes came to him and complained about his associations, they weren't taking into consideration the positive example he was setting for them. And the fact that while he spent time with them, he did not condone their sin. Many times when somebody would come to him to be healed, or consider the adulterous woman of John chapter 8, who was brought before him to be stoned because that's what the law of Moses demanded. And he said, "Let the person without sin cast the first stone," remember? And one by one they went away, and the woman stood there with Jesus, and she said, "Do you condemn me?" And he said, "No. Go and sin no more." He didn't condone what she had done, but he told her to fix it. to get right and to do right from that point on. And that's what he shows in his response to the Pharisees here. Mark chapter 2, verse 17. When Jesus heard it, when he heard their complaint, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. If you give a friend a ride to the doctor's office, and perhaps you even go back into the office with them to see the doctor, the examination room. And the doctor comes in and you're sitting there, and your friend is sitting up on the patient's table, and you're sitting there and the doctor comes in and he's going to have a long conversation with you and not paying any attention to your sick friend, isn't he? No. That's not how he operates, because you are not there to see the doctor. You don't have the health concerns that your friend does. Those who are well have no need of the great physician, but those who have been affected by the sin-sick world, they need that spiritual healing that Jesus provides. They need to see the great physician, the sympathizing Jesus. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Who is Jesus talking to here? He's talking to the Pharisees. He was talking to a group of people who saw themselves as the righteous protectors of God's law, who upheld their traditions to the same standards of the law of Moses. And if you were not willing to bow to their traditions, well, you were just a sinner, even if you didn't violate God's law. They were the righteous ones in their own minds, but the people saw them for who they really were. The people understood they're not really righteous. They say one thing, they do another. They condemn, they have no mercy. I wonder if when Jesus said this, there was perhaps a ripple of giggles among the tax collectors who were behind him. Because even though the Pharisees didn't understand what he was saying, they knew the Pharisees were not righteous. And as a matter of fact, in saying these words, I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance, Jesus was not just talking about the tax collectors and sinners who were sitting behind him at the feast. He was talking about every single soul that has ever existed. Because Romans chapter 3 and verse 10 tells us there is none righteous. No, not one. So when Jesus says, I came to call sinners, not the righteous, what he was saying there is, I came to call the entire world to repentance. The great physician for the sin-sick world. Jesus, blessed Jesus. He still has that healing power when it comes to our spiritual illness, when it comes to sin. Are we accessing that enough? Are we taking advantage of the greatest blessing known to mankind? That is the blood of Jesus. This morning, as you think about where you are, where you stand in relation to God, do you consider yourself among the righteous who do not need the physician? Or do you acknowledge your shortcomings? Do you recognize that there is sin that needs to be taken care of, needs to be repented of, needs to be cleansed by that blood that he shed on the cross? This morning, if you need to repent, if you need the forgiveness of God, and if you want the church to pray with you, we'd be happy to do so. If you've never been baptized to have those sins washed away, you can do that this morning as well. Whatever your needs may be, take care of it now by responding to the invitation as we stand and as we sing.